We are absolutely surrounded by ads, right? Every single day. And most of us, we feel like we've got a pretty good handle on how they work. But what if the one thing we all think is true, that ads exist to persuade us, is just plain wrong? Well, let's dive in and see how advertising actually works according to the evidence.
So let's start with the most basic question of all. When a company pours millions of dollars into a big, flashy ad campaign, what is the number one thing they're trying to accomplish? What is its main job?
If I asked you on the street, you'd probably say its job is to persuade, right? To convince you that their car is safer, their soda tastes better, or their shampoo will make you happier than the one right next to it on the shelf. It's all about changing your mind. That's the classic view.
But here's a puzzle that has driven marketers absolutely crazy for decades. They run a simple price promotion, like a 2-for-1 deal, and bam, sales go through the roof. It's right there in the data, clear as day. But after a huge, expensive, award-winning ad campaign, often nothing, just crickets, a tiny blip if they're lucky. So if these ads are so persuasive, why are their effects basically invisible?
And this is where it gets really nuts. One huge study on TV advertising found that a staggering 84% of the time an ad is shown, it's effectively wasted. Yeah, people either don't notice it at all, or if they do, they can't even remember what brand it was for later. Think about that. 84% of the money and effort just gone.
So this brings us right to the heart of the matter. If advertising isn't really persuading us, and the vast majority of it is just vanishing into thin air, what on earth is it actually doing? What are these companies paying for?
To get to the answer, we have to take a quick detour and look at how brands really grow. Because it turns out that popular idea of building a small cult-like following of super loyal fans, well, that's pretty much a myth. This quote right here basically flips a century of marketing theory on its head. Decades of data show this undeniable pattern. Brands don't grow by getting their existing customers to be more loyal. They grow by getting more people to buy them, period, even if it's just once or twice a year. The real secret is reaching a massive audience of what we call light occasional buyers. I mean, the perfect example is Coca-Cola. It isn't the biggest beverage brand in the world because it has a small group of diehards who drink it every single day. No way. It's a giant because almost everyone on the planet buys a Coke every now and then. It's all about market penetration. This pattern is so predictable and so consistent across categories that it's been called a scientific law in marketing, the double jeopardy law. It basically says that small brands get a double whammy. First, and this is the big one, they have way fewer buyers than big brands. And second, as a smaller penalty, those few buyers they do have are also just a little bit less loyal. Let's make this totally real with some data for shampoo brands in the UK. Now, just look at that last column, purchase frequency. That's our stand-in for loyalty. The average Head & Shoulders buyer buys it 1.9 times a year. The buyer for the tiny brand Vocine, 1.6 times. That is almost identical. The loyalty is basically the same across the board. But now, look at the middle column, penetration. Whoa, 23% of households buy the leader, while only 4% buy the small brand. That is the massive difference. That's the whole ballgame.
So the crucial point here is this. The giant gap between big brands and small brands, it's not about loyalty. It is almost entirely about penetration, the sheer number of different people who buy you. If you want to grow, you need more buyers. Simple as that.
Okay, so if growth is all about reaching more and more buyers, what is advertising's role in all of this? Well, this brings us to its real job. And it's not trying to persuade you that a brand is logically better. It's about building and refreshing memories, making sure that brand just pops into your head when you're ready to buy. This slide lays out the whole shift perfectly. The old view on the left was all about persuasion, about teaching you some kind of message. The new, evidence-based view on the right is much different. It's about getting noticed, reaching as many people as possible, and, most importantly, building what are called memory structures. And that brings us to the key concept, mental availability. This is the real goal of all advertising. It's not about convincing you of anything. It's about making a brand so easy to remember that it just comes to mind, effortlessly, when you're in a store or browsing online. It's about being mentally available at the moment of truth. So this brings us full circle, back to our original puzzle. If advertising is just building these memories, why is its effect on sales so hard to spot in the short term? The answer is something called the gentle nudge effect. This is what a price promotion looks like in the sales data. You drop the price and boom, you get this huge, immediate, and super obvious spike in sales. It's easy to measure, and it feels awesome, but it's temporary. Advertising, though, doesn't work like that at all. It's not a big shove, it's more like a whisper. It works by giving a tiny, almost invisible nudge to the purchase probability of millions of people, all spread out over a very long time. And this is what the advertising effect looks like. It's this tiny little lift spread out over months, even years. Each individual nudge is way too small to even spot. But when you add up millions of those tiny nudges over a long period of time, the cumulative effect is what builds and maintains a brand's huge market share. So, if this is how it really works, the big question is, how do you make advertising that, actually works? How do you make sure your ad budget doesn't just disappear into that 84% of waste? Well, it really boils down to two incredibly simple but incredibly difficult jobs. First, in a world that's screaming for our attention, your ad simply has to get noticed. And second, once it gets noticed, people have to know which brand it's for. That's it. And that's where most advertising completely falls apart. So here is the evidence-based recipe for success. Step 1, get noticed. The best tool we have for that? Emotion. An ad that makes you feel something, whether it's joy, surprise, or just plain humor, is way more likely to cut through the clutter. Then, step 2, get branded. You have to link that feeling back to your brand by consistently using your distinctive brand assets. And what exactly are those? Well, think of them as your brand's unique signature. It's the McDonald's golden arches, it's the I'm lovin' it jingle, it's the Intel sound logo, or the specific shade of Coca-Cola red. These are the mental shortcuts that instantly connect an ad back to the brand, building that all-important mental availability we talked about. So the single most important thing to take away is this. Great advertising isn't about crafting the perfect logical argument. It's about creating memorable, well-branded content that ensures your brand is the one that pops into someone's head in a buying situation. It is a battle for memory, not a battle for their opinion. And that leaves us with a final question for you to think about next time you see an ad. Is it actually building a powerful memory in your mind? Or is it just more noise, destined to disappear right into that 84% pile of advertising waste?